What's something most people don't realize will end you in seconds? Story 1. Brake checking a semi. You'd think it'd be obvious, but nope. We had a local case where a road rager brake checked an old man to a complete stop in the middle of the highway and then started to take off. The tractor trailer behind them couldn't stop in time and ended the old man. The road rager went to prison for manslaughter. Story 2. Slipping in the shower. I slipped or passed out, we don't know. In the shower 2 years ago. Hit the front and back of my head. I was lucky my husband was home and heard the banging. Woke up to him shaking me and on the phone with 911. Bad concussion. Seriously, the worst headache of my life. Lost 6 months of memory. I never got back. Had mild aphasia and the shakes for a few weeks after and a personality change, but I feel very lucky it wasn't worse. Story 3. The Great Lakes. Just this past weekend, 4 people decided to go in the water near my house, even though the beach was under red flag warning and high waves. 3 got pulled out by a good Samaritan when they got in trouble. 3 days later, and Coast Guard and fire departments still haven't found the body of the 4th one. Riptides are real. Weather kicks up fast. The Great Lakes are huge and dangerous. This is not your local pontoon lake. Story 4. Carbon dioxide. People have died playing with dry ice. Decades ago, setting up for a party where the plan was to feature a punch bowl with dry ice fog. I went to an industrial dry ice plant nearby to buy a block of the stuff. Turned out they only sell in industrial quantities, but they said I could take as much as I wanted, so I filled my car hatchback with maybe 250 pounds of dry ice and drove off. Guy from the facility comes running after me, screaming, "Open your windows!" He may have saved my life. Story 5. Enclosed spaces. Don't assume it's the air you're used to down there. There were 2 utility workers in my hometown that died going into an underground drainage control. Opened it up, and the first guy went down and passed out from whatever gases were down there. Second guy went in after him and passed out too. Years ago, I was receiving safety training at a chemical plant. One thing they stressed was there must be a second person who is outside the enclosed space, and that second person must never go in to rescue the first person. The second is there to call for help from the proper safety people on site. If the second person goes in, now the rescue people have 2 people to get out of there. Story 6. Horses. We've lived with them for so long that unless you spend regular time around them, you don't know just how unbelievably dangerous they are. It's a good thing they're so stupid or we'd be done. Movies have people believing they're these docile creatures that live to serve humans. Those are the ones that have been trained extensively. They are otherwise 1,500 pounds of dumb, panicky hair trigger muscle. I did some endurance riding when I was younger on a half Arab, half Mustang filly. She was a pleasure to ride, except if she saw a large rock. Then she somehow went sideways right under me, leaving me desperately trying to hold on until she calmed down. Another time she stomped hard, and I thought she stepped in a hole or something, but when I looked back, there was a rattlesnake flailing around because its head got smashed into the ground mid-stride. Loved that horse. She was smart and had lots of common sense, except when it came to rocks. Story 7. Hitting your head against a wall. There's a pretty famous story about a basketball player who missed a shot, got annoyed, and headbutted. If I remember correctly, the post the hoop is attached to didn't end him but paralyzed him from the neck down for life. People do die from doing this. I've seen people get mad and headbutt something 100 times, but do it wrong once and that's it. You're dead. Edit. He made the shot but was called out and got a foul so it didn't count. He died 13 years later. Someone has replied with a video link, but watch at your own discretion. It's not nice. Story 8. I stopped 2 German or Austrian tourists from touching a poisonous frog in Colombia. They had no idea. They were inches away with their phones. I hadn't spoken German in years, but man, my panic reaction brought those words to the tip of my tongue real fast. Don't mess with wildlife, especially outside your own habitat. As an Australian, the amount of times I see tourists getting way too close to the wildlife is crazy to me. We've yelled at a tourist from our car before that they needed to get back in their car because everyone was stopped to let a cassowary cross the road, and they got out to take pictures and give it food. By the way, everyone, if you ever are in far north Queensland, Australia, do not feed the cassowaries if you see one. Story 9. Moving water. It's freaking dangerous. Water's heavy, so when it's moving, it has a lot of energy. It might not feel too bad walking through knee-deep flowing water, but if you fall, the water will have more area to push on. You may not be able to get yourself on your feet again. I'm a competitive, in my age class, swimmer and a wild swimmer, and I tell you, I'm a lot more cautious now than I ever was when I just knew how to do a bit of doggy paddle. I sometimes wonder how I survived back in the day. Even so, a couple years ago, I got into trouble in a river about 2 feet deep. Exactly like you say, it didn't feel bad walking through it, but I slipped and went under. and the weight or angle or speed of the water made it very hard to get up. I inhaled a lot of river. It was not fun. Story 10. Inhaling too much helium. I worked at a party store and we had someone rent a helium tank. We rented them by the week, and then every week after there was a charge done to your card immediately. After 3 months, we got a call from the renter's daughter asking if we could please stop charging her father's card. He had used the helium tank commit seppuku the day he rented the tank, and we had charged him over $1,500 in the 3 months since. It became a huge thing where we had to actively tell people once you fill your lungs completely with helium, that the alveoli can no longer process oxygen correctly. So while it's all fun and games to have that squeaky voice, one super deep breath can end your life. Story 11. Manipulations by chiropractor. And if the manipulation doesn't end you, it can certainly cause paraplegia or quadriplegia, vertebral dissections. The sad part is that chiropractors will never own up to the fact, and they'll actually claim that patients are coming in with an active stroke. Unfortunately, a lot of their research is skewed. I would highly recommend looking into the American Medical Association, particularly neurologists, to see the detrimental effects that a chiropractor can have. It's unfortunate how many people die secondary to chiropractic manipulations, particularly in the neck and back. For reference, I am an occupational therapist who has seen plenty of paraplegics and quadriplegics secondary to chiropractic injury. My daughter-in-law was treated by a chiropractor for back pain using acupuncture needles. Later that day, my son had to take her to the hospital due to shortness of breath. Collapsed lung. Turns out a needle had been pushed in too far between the ribs, punctured the pleural space. She's fine, but it took a damn year to fully heal and her lung to go completely back to normal. When notified, the chiro refunded all the money she'd paid for treatments without being asked. I assumed to prevent her from getting sued. Story 12. Hi, I'm in EMS. Please wash your hands before you eat stuff. So many people come in contact with so many other people who have illnesses that can be contracted by eating with unclean fingers. Even if you've been around people you know all day, you never know who they've been around, and sometimes it's not even illnesses, rather random germs. And I know this is obvious to some people, but next time you see a local EMS crew eating food with their funny colored gloves on, it's because we've made a habit, even if we hadn't run any calls that day. Of course, if you aren't in healthcare, you're not being exposed to as much. But sometimes you need a reminder just how dirty the outside world really is. Story 13. I would venture to say most people realize what can end you instantly, but less commonly discussed, would be dehydration. Yes, you can die within seconds from it. Heart failure is what gets you. And if you are already primed for a heart attack due to either unhealthy habits or genetics, dehydration can kill you in seconds. Some drop dead of a widowmaker right there on the spot. Dehydration truly is a gamble, so be cautious with it. Happens a lot in the summer months, as people pick up alcohol and energy drinks instead of electrolytes. Story 14. Bad or old ammo. Smokeless powder can degrade over time, especially if the cartridge is exposed to extreme temperatures or vibrations, making the gunpowder inside behave unpredictably. Might not have enough power to get the bullet out the barrel, creating a barrel obstruction, or it could create a pressure spike and blow up the gun. Always work with quality ammo and don't buy Bubba's pissin' hot reloads from the gun show, even though they are cheap. Story 15. Anyone who works in a shop, hopefully, knows this. But compressed air. Not an uncommon thing for you to use it to blow metal shavings or other debris off your clothes after you're done working. But if you have even a small cut somewhere, and you get the air gun too close, you can put an air bubble in your bloodstream, which will kill you the moment it passes through your heart. From what I've been told, it is very painful and only takes a few seconds. Story 16. Cross-contamination. I work with kids. We give them snacks every day if they don't have them. One child has an EpiPen due to their allergies with dairy and nuts. We had a kid throw food at them, and it landed in their snack. I had to throw the whole snack away and get them a new one. I made them all look at me and stopped talking and redirected them every time they tried to get distracted during the announcement of why that is not okay and why there is zero tolerance for that. I told them under no circumstances were they ever to touch her food, to mess with her food, to try to take her food. Nothing. Because if they did, and she goes into anaphylactic shock, and we have to use her EpiPen to save her life, we would be reviewing every single tape taken that day, because we have cameras everywhere to find out who did it, and that they would be in the biggest trouble of their life so far when we found out who did it, not if, when. Because some of these kids think it's a joke. They think it's funny. They've tried taking my cane, which I need on bad pain days. I'm not letting a kid get bullied or harassed like that with something like this, let alone at all in general. I think the kid with the allergy realized how much I care about their safety today when I made them all stop and pay attention without a distraction, to listen to the rules about that. Disabilities and allergies are something I will not tolerate willful ignorance about. And if they push it like it's some kind of joke, then they won't be allowed back. Story 17. Not taking your blood pressure meds and leaving high blood pressure unchecked. It's not always a dead in seconds type of thing. But if you leave your blood pressure high for a long time, it causes a lot of damage to your heart and blood vessels that will end up causing a stroke or heart attack, or so many other problems. You're put at risk for getting an aortic aneurysm, which, if it ruptures or develops into an aortic dissection, you can be dead in seconds because you will be bleeding out internally. As someone who works in an ER, it's crazy and sad to see how many people do not take their blood pressure seriously and could have avoided a lot of terrible problems if they had managed it better. One that seems obvious, but maybe not guns. They are meant to kill. They are not toys. It seems a lot of people forget this, and I've seen too many children and teenagers dead because of this. They are dangerous and should be treated as such. Not to pull out because someone disrespected you or you got in a fight, and not to underestimate how quickly things can go bad with one around. Please take care of your health, everyone. Story 18:1. Small creatures they find in random places, especially the beach or in the woods. If you see a small creature and you don't know what it is, leave it alone, especially if it has bright colors. 2. The ocean. Seems like common sense? It's not. So many people underestimate how dangerous the ocean really is. Once you step into the ocean, you're no longer at the top of the food chain. Plus, at least in Florida, riptides have been very common recently. 3. Having long nails in the medical field. It couldn't kill you, but patients. There is so much bacteria under your nails. There was a nurse who got her nails done who ended up actually ending a baby with the amount of bacteria under her nail. Story 19. Cold water shock. Especially on a hot day, diving into a cold body of water to cool off can seriously mess up your heart and breathing. Your body can shut down unbelievably quickly due to the cold shock. Every year, multiple people in my state die from diving into lakes and rivers on the first hot day of the summer. Those lakes and rivers are fed by mountains and glaciers and are barely above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The worst is when someone dives and they go deep enough to hit that part of the water that is 10, 15 degrees lower than the surface. They go into a kind of super shock, and their body tenses up so much they can't swim or float. They just gasp, swallow ice cold water, then sink and drown, instantly to the bottom. Story 20. Water. That placid looking stream you're planning to wade across? The strength of a current can be deceptive. It can sweep you away in seconds, and if that happens, you're dead. If you get trapped against something, the force of a strong current can easily turn into multiple tones. It's like having a car dropped on you. It can literally crush your body to a pulp and wrench your limbs out of their sockets. Stay the hell away from low dams. They're called drowning machines for a reason. Stay the hell away from large structures underwater. Delta P is silent, invisible, and deadly. Look up the gif of the crab being crushed to bits and sucked into a pipe. That could be you. Story 21. Falling off a bike or in general any accelerating object. My mom has been a nurse for 20 years. She has seen some crap. But now with electric scooters becoming popular, she has been on me about wearing a helmet. Not that I always do, of course, but she forces me to. Anyway, she described to me how she had to take care of a boy who had fallen off an electric scooter with no protection at all. He literally died on the spot from the impact on his head. She had to take care of him because if they didn't do anything, then the boy's friends would know that he was dead. So they had to pretend to take care of him in the ambulance. He fell head back onto the pavement. Pavement. Not a rock or anything that impaled him. No, pavement. Wear your helmets, folk, or else you might only feel yourself fall before it's all gone. Story 22. Dumping a ton of dry ice or liquid nitrogen in your swimming pool, especially an indoor pool. Either will rapidly turn to gas as their temperature equalizes with the water and ambient air. Either gas is heavier than air and will form a cloud that displaces oxygen near the surface. Once completely deprived of oxygen, you really only have a few seconds before you pass out. If you don't have someone to pull you out of the pool cloud, you're done. The nitrogen is more dangerous, not because it's toxic, it's completely inert, but because our need to breathe reflex, our suffocation instinct, is based on the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the bloodstream, not on the presence or absence of oxygen. So unlike with the dry ice, if the nitrogen displaces the air and you start to suffocate it, you won't even realize it. After a few seconds, you'll get lightheaded and then pass out, with essentially no warning. Story 23. A buddy of mine was pruning a tree in his backyard and his feet were about 6 feet off the ground. It was a small tree. He fell out of the tree and compound fractured his arm, broke his wrist, and somehow injured his spine. He was taken by ambulance to a trauma center and spent time in the ICU, hospital, and rehab centers for months. He lost major movement to his left side and has significant mobility issues to this day. Walks with arm crutches. Story 24. Heard that extract from Russian hardy almonds contains cyanide. Basically everything in the genus Prunus, cherries, almonds, apricots, peaches, etc., or malus apples, produce amygdalin in their tissues, which, when the cells are crushed in the presence of moisture, saliva, breaks down enzymatically into basically benzaldehyde, the almond flavoring molecule, glucose, and cyanide. It's all down to concentration. There's very little in the fruit, but potentially a lot more in the bark, foliage, or in the seeds, especially the kernels. Almonds are the kernels at the heart of the seed. Livestock occasionally die from browsing the foliage of chokecherry or wild black cherry. Sweet almonds have a very low concentration of amygdalin. Bitter almonds contain a lot more, and while they can be used commercially to extract the benzaldehyde for natural almond flavoring, they're also potentially deadly if you eat them. Done correctly, the benzaldehyde is effectively separated from nearly all the cyanide. You could still theoretically hurt yourself if you drank a whole bunch of natural almond extract at once, but you'd probably be more injured by the alcohol in there than the trace amounts of cyanide. I can totally see some Russian outfit cheaping out on the purification process and leaving much higher than safe concentrations of CN in the end product. Apricot kernels are the same. The Western sweet apricots only have a small amount of amygdalin in the kernel. They taste a lot like almonds, but creamier. I've tried them. You'd have to eat quite a few to suffer harm. Mediterranean bitter apricots contain much higher concentrations. Some naturopaths advocate for laetrile as a cure-all, or at least a cancer cure preventative. Laetrile is amygdalin. Bitter apricot kernels are marketed as a health food natural remedy, and people have died from eating them, or worse, given them to children who need a much smaller dose to suffer harm. Apple seeds are similar. Concentration varies by variety and growing conditions. It can take as little as a few dozen or as much as hundreds to kill you. I read at least one anecdote about a guy who liked the taste. They're sweet because of the glucose released and taste like almonds, cherries. So he saved them up for a while and ate a whole bunch at once as a treat and died of cyanide poisoning. Story 25. Hydrogen sulfide comes from a lot of places, including oil wells, manure pits, waste disposal areas, etc. At low concentrations, it smells like rotten eggs, and at higher concentrations, above 100 parts per million or thereabouts, it will quickly kill you. I've been told by some of my roughnecking buddies that it can loosely bind with water and develop high concentrations as it binds, but someone stepping in a mud puddle will cause it to release. They say if you see someone step in a mud puddle near an oil rig who then collapses, don't go running up or you might join him. Story 26 Delta P. Sudden changes in pressure. Particularly, we'd be talking about culverts, sewage drains, dam walls, anywhere where something is holding back a lot of water and letting it go through a small port. People get kind of enthusiastic and excited around flooded areas, thinking they can just have fun in the water and it will go away soon, which is sometimes true. But those sewage drains are doing one of two things. Both are extraordinarily dangerous to you, and you can't tell from looking at them which they're doing. Either they're spitting raw sewage up to the surface, or they're sucking large volumes of water from the surface. If the former, at least you'll only have a relatively mild infection and pink eye. If the latter, you could be sucked in, pinned against a grate, and drowned. It could also be enough pressure to rip your body apart and kill you instantly, or just rip parts of you off and leave you suffering in agony. Story 27. Eye redness drops. Multiple brands. Not seconds, but pretty damn lethal. Kills overnight. They use a lethal compound. Even a few drops can end a young person, and a quick squirt of it is more than the amount that has a 50% chance to kill an adult. It is used as a murder weapon, and many people got away with it because it didn't get tested in autopsies much until it became more widely known. When I was young and unaware of the danger, I used them pretty liberally on my eyes, and if a drop ran down to my lips, I would just lick it off. They are damn near tasteless. Story 28. All the mundane things, the things that people normally don't even put a thought towards. My own recent brush with death really opened my eyes to how everyday life can go from mundane and sleepy to critically life-threatening in an instant, or just straight to black without any realization something happened, let alone what happened. Tripping and hitting your head, taking a wrong step and getting hit by a car or falling off a height, underestimating the danger of some water and drowning, choking on your dinner, something falling onto you and crushing you, or just having a heart attack or stroke and dropping dead. The crazy 1 in a million occurrences are what gets all the attention. But in reality, death is around every corner and can come at the most boring of times with no warning whatsoever. Remember, most people die of relatively mundane things, and that includes those who died suddenly.